Hi, Virgo. Hmm. Can I tell you something personal? There is a particular kind of exhaustion that nobody talks about enough. Not the tiredness that comes from not sleeping, not the kind that a weekend fixes. The deeper kind. The kind that settles into a person after they have been holding on for a long time, holding on to hope that keeps asking to be renewed, holding on to a version of their life they have been trying to build while the ground keeps shifting underneath them, holding on to the belief that stability, real stability, the kind that does not feel borrowed or temporary or one unexpected expense away from collapsing, is actually possible for them. That kind of exhaustion lives in the bones. And I think some of you know exactly what I mean. Before anything else, to everyone who has been part of this space for a while, who comes back here and leaves pieces of themselves in the comments, who trusts this enough to keep showing up, thank you. That trust is not something I take lightly. And to anyone here for the first time today, I am glad you found this. Stay with me for this one, because this one is tender. And tender things deserve time. I want to talk to you about home, not just the physical version of it, not just walls and rooms and a key that belongs to you, though that matters too, and I am not going to pretend it does not, but the fuller version of home, the feeling of it, the sense of being somewhere that actually fits, somewhere you did not have to shrink yourself to inhabit, somewhere that holds you rather than tolerates you. Have you had that fully? A place or a period or a combination of circumstances that felt genuinely like home in that complete sense? Or has it been something you have been reaching toward for a while now? Something that has felt close in certain moments and then slipped just slightly out of reach before it fully settled? I asked because what I feel for you right now has everything to do with that reaching and with what might be on the other side of it. There has been a chapter, a stretch of time in your life, maybe recent, maybe longer than recent, that has been characterized by a particular kind of instability. Not necessarily dramatic instability, not necessarily the kind that anyone looking from the outside would immediately identify as hardship. Sometimes it is subtler than that. The quiet unease of not quite knowing where things are going, the low hum of financial uncertainty that colors everything, even when things are technically fine, the sense of living in a version of your life that is functional but not yet fully yours. That is not quite settled into the shape it is supposed to take. You have been living inside something provisional, and provisional is exhausting in a specific way because it requires a constant low level of management, a constant awareness that things could shift, a constant readiness to adapt that never fully lets you rest into what is, because what is might change before you have finished adjusting to it. That kind of living takes something from a person over time, quietly, without asking permission. And I want to name that before anything else, before the hopeful part, before the part that talks about what might be shifting or what could be opening or what the energy seems to suggest about the direction things are moving. Before all of that, I want to say this: what you have been carrying is real. The weight of it is real. The way it has affected you, the way it has colored your sense of what is possible for you, the way it has sometimes made the distance between where you are and where you want to be feel almost too large to cross, that is real. and you have been carrying it while still showing up, still trying, still choosing again and again to believe that something better is possible, even on the days when the evidence for that belief was thin. That deserves to be said out loud. Now, let me talk about what I feel moving in your situation. And as always, I hold this as sensing, as reflection, as the honest offering of what comes through for me when I sit with your energy, never as certainty, never as guarantee. Something is beginning to loosen. The tightness that has been around your material circumstances, around the questions of stability and home and financial ground, it does not feel as fixed to me as it may feel from where you are standing inside it. There is something in the energy that carries a quality of movement, of things that have been stuck, beginning to find new positions, of doors that were not visible before possibly beginning to reveal themselves. I say possibly deliberately. I say beginning deliberately because what I feel is not a sudden dramatic shift. It is more like the first signs of a thaw after a long winter. Slow, quiet, easy to miss if you are not paying attention. Easy to dismiss as wishful thinking if you have been disappointed before and your hope has learned to protect itself by not rising too quickly. But the thawing is real when it happens, even when it is slow. What might this look like for you? I cannot say specifically. I genuinely cannot and would not pretend to. But what I sense is an opening in the area of living situation, of the physical place you call home or are trying to call home, a possibility that may not have been visible or accessible before, beginning to show itself, something that carries a different quality than what you have been settling for, something that might feel, when it arrives in whatever form it takes, less like a compromise and more like an actual yes. And in the area of financial stability, what I sense is not a windfall, not a sudden dramatic change, but something more durable than that. A steadying, a gradual movement toward ground that holds, the kind of stability that comes not from one lucky moment, but from a combination of things aligning in a way that creates something more solid than what has been available recently. Those things may take time to fully materialize. They may arrive differently than expected. They may require something from you, some decision or some action or some willingness to step toward something that feels uncertain before it feels safe. But the direction they seem to be moving is toward you. And now I want to say the thing that I feel most tenderly for you today, because the title of this reading talks about happiness, about a kind of joy that might be waiting on the other side of what you are moving through. And I want to be very careful with that word because happiness is one of the most misunderstood things there is. The happiness that might be possible for you on the other side of this chapter. It is not the loud kind. It is not the kind that announces itself with fireworks or arrives in a single moment of revelation. It is quieter than that, and in some ways more profound because of the quietness. It is the kind that comes from waking up in a place that actually feels like yours, from checking your bank account without the familiar clench of anxiety in your stomach, from having enough, not excess necessarily, enough, the particular and deeply underrated piece of enough. That version of happiness is not glamorous. It does not make for exciting stories. But for someone who has been living without it for a while, for someone who knows what it is to carry the weight of instability through ordinary days, it is everything. And what I feel for you is that something resembling that version of happiness might be closer to possible than it has been in a while. Not guaranteed, not promised, but closer, genuinely closer. Have you allowed yourself to imagine it? Not in a desperate way, not in the way that immediately comes with the sting of wanting something you are not sure you can have, but gently, the way you might allow yourself to picture something good without immediately bracing against the disappointment of it not arriving. Have you let yourself feel, even briefly, what it might feel like to not be worried about where you live or whether you have enough, to just be somewhere stable and know it is yours and breathe differently because of that? I would love to know where you are with that in the comments, whether you have been able to hold that kind of hope or whether the hoping itself has become something that feels too costly. Because I think many of you have been protecting yourselves from your own desire for stability, and there is something worth sitting with in that. Let me talk now about what this kind of shift, if it is coming, tends to ask of the person it is coming toward, because nothing real arrives without asking something. What I sense this particular opening might ask of you is a willingness to believe you deserve it before you have proof that it is real. And that is harder than it sounds, especially for someone who has been disappointed, especially for someone who has learned through experience that hope extended too far can leave you vulnerable in ways that hurt. But here's the thing about deserving. You do not have to earn stability. You do not have to prove yourself worthy of having enough. You do not have to have done everything right or made all the correct decisions or suffered sufficiently before you are allowed to receive something good. Stability and home and financial ground are not rewards for virtue. They are things human beings need, things you need. And the needing of them is not a weakness or a lack of gratitude for what you have. It is just true. And the sooner you can hold that truth without apology, without the subtle background belief that other people deserve good things, but your situation is somehow more complicated than that, the more available you become to receive what might be moving in your direction. That receiving posture, that open-handed, I am worthy of this, I do not need to justify my desire for a stable life posture. That is actually one of the most important things you can cultivate right now. Not as a manifestation technique, not as a trick to attract outcomes, but as a simple act of self-respect, of acknowledging that what you want for yourself is reasonable, that the life you are reaching toward is not excessive or delusional, that other people have these things and there is no fundamental reason why they belong to them and not to you. So here is where I want to leave you today, with something concrete, something you can carry into the next few days and weeks as things continue to move, as possibilities continue to reveal themselves, as the ground beneath you continues its slow steadying. Pay attention to the small openings, not the dramatic ones, the small ones. The conversation that seems minor but introduces you to someone or something that turns out to matter. The opportunity that looks slightly different from what you expected but carries something real inside it. The door that does not look like the door you were watching for, but that, when you step through it, leads somewhere better than the one you had been waiting to open. Real shifts tend to announce themselves quietly at first. Stay awake to the quiet announcements. And while you are staying awake to them, take care of yourself. Rest when you can. Let yourself feel the hope without immediately armoring against it. Let the possibility of better be something you carry with some tenderness rather than something you hold at arm's length to protect yourself from the disappointment of it not arriving. It has not arrived yet, but something in the direction you are facing feels like it might be worth staying turned toward. Hold that. Take care, Virgo.